So today's session is mental fitness for real life. We're going to talk about building resilience without burning you out because let's face it, we already have enough stress. For those that don't know me, my name is Megan Wollerton, and I currently own and operate Life Force Wellness. We're a company that provides individual and corporate wellness services to clients all over the United States and in a few other countries as well. We've recently expanded. I currently hold certifications as a personal trainer, health coach, nutrition coach, corporate wellness specialist, positive psychology practitioner, and I do have a certification in stress management, sleep, and recovery. And by the end of this month, we'll have a new one on change psychology. So, of course, as I continue to learn and grow and expand my library, we're going to continue these sessions every week so that I can share that information with you. So, today we're talking about mental resilience, but more specifically, mental fitness and how we build that resilience. And what I'm seeing day to day is that so many people are overwhelmed. They're carrying a ton of stress, anxiety, mental fatigue, emotional exhaustion. Burnout has been a buzzword for probably the last 5 years. And I feel like despite all of us talking about it, it doesn't seem to be getting any better. So, the question I have for you specifically today: when was the last time you felt emotionally steady, even during chaos? Like everything around you was crumbling, and it wasn't this toxic positivity of I'm fine, but like you legitimately felt okay through the chaos. When was the last time you felt that way? And do any of these sound familiar? I'm hitting the snooze buttons multiple times in the morning. I feel on edge or emotionally numb. I forget things or struggle to stay focused. I'm withdrawing from people or avoiding conversations. I feel resentful when someone asks me for help. My sleep or appetite has changed. I'm saying I'll rest later more often than I should. If your catchphrase is I'll sleep when I'm dead, welcome. You are in the right place. If any of these sound familiar, it's telling me that you're already stressed out. You're already full of anxiety. And where most stress management presentations will go is talking about reducing the stress. It talks about eliminating the stress. We talk about stress being bad. But if you were with me in our Everything is on Fire presentation, you'll know that I asked you to look at stress a little bit differently. I want us to be grateful to the stress that we feel because without it, we would have died as a species a long time ago. You know, if you take this back to our ancestors and they were out foraging for food and a lion jumped out at them, they went into what we typically call our fight or flight response. And that's when we had that heavy stress response where adrenaline and cortisol flood the body and it causes your heart to beat faster, your muscles to tighten, blood pressure to rise, your senses become sharper, your breath quickens. And those are all the things I want to have happen if I'm about to fight a lion or run away from a lion. And if it weren't for that physiological response being triggered by stress, we would not have that. And so our nervous system was built to protect us. So our stress is there to really protect us. The problem is we are living in constant survival mode. We are always stressed out. And unlike our ancestors who went back to their little cave dwellings and was able to chill out, we feel like we are always on. And that's what's really causing a lot of the issues that we are feeling today. The other thing is we may not recognize our real stress response. So a lot of times we'll talk fight or flight mode. And these are the two that are most typically well known. Fight mode is when we want to confront the threat head on. And that's me. I'm a former competitive boxer, so my knee-jerk reaction when I am super stressed out is like I'm ready to like throw hands. And that might be you too. It shows up like anger and irritability or lashing out, the feeling the need to control the situation. Like maybe you're the person that just when you're stressed out, you just start going, okay, you start barking out the orders because you're trying to like get back control of all the chaos going on. It can show up as verbal or physical aggression. It can also show up as passive aggression. So, like if you're somebody that sends those passive aggressive emails, that's you in fight mode. And your internal message is if I fight hard enough, I'll survive. Because remember, this is about survival. So this is all about you fighting to stay alive. In flight mode, it's a little bit different. This is where we try to escape or avoid the danger. Now, you may not actually go running out of the room whenever you get stressed, but you might walk out of certain situations. This can also show up as anxiety or panic. It can show up as overworking or over planning. So, if you're somebody who has plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and like double Z, you might be a flight person. If you also avoid confrontation or people altogether, like if you're having tension with that coworker, you just avoid that coworker. That is technically flight mode. So your internal message is if I run fast enough, I'll be safe. Now, the two you may not know are freeze and fawn. So, freeze, we've all experienced at least for a split second. You know, you're walking down the hall and somebody drops a glass and you hear that glass shatter, and we all kind of like take that deep breath in and freeze for a moment until we realize, like, what was that? And once our brains process it, then we relax. Some people kind of get stuck there. And it's this idea of playing possum or playing dead, becoming unnoticeable. And so, what this looks like is disassociation or feeling numb. People who their stress response is to freeze, they have a hard time making decisions or they procrastinate. You know, if I just keep pushing it to the back of the pile, I won't have to deal with it. And so their internal message is if I just don't move, maybe the danger will pass. You know, if I can shrink myself and make myself smaller. So this is also like if you are in high stress, and you're in a room with a lot of people, you might physically actually try to shrink yourself because you are just overwhelmed by everything going on. Fawn is the one that I see the most, but I think is the least talked about. This is where we try to appease the threat or avoid the harm through appeasement. So this shows up as people pleasing. Maybe you're the person that says yes to everything and it's just to avoid conflict. So when your aunt says, "Hey, can you take care of grandma this weekend?" No, you really don't want to take care of grandma this weekend. You've done it the last 4 weekends, but you say yes because you just know it's going to turn into a whole thing and you really don't feel like fighting with anyone over it anymore. That is fawning. When you ignore your own needs or you prioritize the needs of others past the point of like to the point that you're self neglecting, that is the fawn response. So your internal message is if I just keep everyone happy, I'll be safe. This also I see shows up in the corporate environment or even family structures when there's tension in the room. They're that person that tries to crack a joke at sometimes inappropriate times, but that is definitely a fawn response because they're just trying to make everyone happy. They can feel that tension and they're just trying to like eliminate it by like cracking a joke. So sometimes when people do that, don't get so offended by it, even though it is inappropriate timing. Understand that is their stress response taking over. They are feeling threatened in some way. So, stress looks a little bit different and it plays on different areas of our body a little bit differently. So, for mental health, it shows up as cognitive function decrease. So, really not being able to learn new things. Like, it's going to be hard to learn new tasks when you are under high stress. Physically, it will show up as aches and pains in the body. Emotionally, you might not be able to control your emotions. This is when you lash out, you snap at someone in anger, or you break down and you cry. Sleeping, you might have a hard time falling asleep or staying asleep. Digestion, we see it differently with different people. Some people use food as a coping mechanism for their stress. Others, they are so stressed out they can't eat. And all of this leads to a lack of productivity because we're unable to focus, we're unable to make good decisions. You know, we have that cognitive decrease, and that just feeds the animal. You know, we're stressed out because we're not getting enough done. We're not getting enough done. It causes us to stress out, and it just becomes this really ugly, vicious cycle that we fall into. So, this is where the idea of mental fitness comes into play. So, mental fitness is very much like physical fitness. It's this idea that you can strengthen your mind the same way you can strengthen your body through regular habits. And they're habits that focus on resilience, emotional regulation, and clarity under pressure. And some of the key components of mental fitness are first and foremost self awareness. Understand your triggers, your thought patterns. You know, what is your default F? Are you a fight, freeze, or fawn kind of person? What is your default mode when you're in high stress? Cognitive flexibility. Are you able to reframe setbacks and shift perspectives? Like, are you able to look at a passive aggressive email and quickly go, you know what, maybe they're just having a bad day rather than wanting to fight back? Emotional regulation. Are you able to manage your reactions with skill? Meaning you are responding, not reacting. Are you able to focus and have clarity and avoid the overwhelm of all the distractions in a day? And are you able to have an optimistic outlook? Are you able to bounce back? Do you have that resilience to kind of work through the adversity and come out the other side? So, mental fitness requires practice just like physical fitness. Unfortunately, a lot of people that want to teach about stress management and stuff, they really talk about eliminating the stress. And I think there's absolutely a time and a place. There are certain stressors we can move out of our life. But if we want to build up our resilience, we can't avoid every hard thing. We have to do hard things. It takes the hard things to build it up. Just like when you go to the gym, going over and grabbing the 5 pound pink Barbie weights is not going to be as challenging as going over and maybe grabbing the 20 pound weights. You have to do the hard things if you want to get stronger. And we build resilience by experiencing that challenge, learning we can survive it, regulating ourselves through it, so that talking ourselves through it, and then giving ourselves a chance to recover afterwards. There has to be a decompression phase. And over time, this increases our confidence, our adaptability, and our emotional capacity. So think of it just like building your biceps at the gym. Maybe you go in and you start with the 5 pound weights and you do, 3 sets of 20 reps. And then you move up to the 8s and the 10s and the 20s and the 30s. And eventually you're building up your capacity to lift heavier weight. The more you do hard, challenging things, the more you can take that on without feeling the overwhelm and the stress. This is where even the idea of post-traumatic growth comes from. Now, I am not saying you should go out and traumatize yourself. That certainly would build some level of resilience, but we're going to come up with better ways to do this. But I want you to think maybe you've been through a traumatic event. And now you almost view other problems as like not that big of a deal. You're like, that is nothing compared to that thing I went through. Someone I think about is my grandfather, who was a World War II vet, right? That generation who had gone to war, they seemed like a different breed. Like nothing really seemed to get to them. More of anything, they complained about how we were so soft. And really, compared to them, we kind of were because we didn't go through the things they went through. My grandfather drafted when he was 16 years old because he lied about his age and fought multiple tours and even under General Patton. So he had seen some stuff. He had been in the trenches. And this man was one of the most patient men I have ever met. And he controlled his temper really well. And a lot of that, in his later years, when I would talk to him about it, it came because he had to learn to control his anger. You couldn't lose your head on the battlefield. And so the trauma of him going through those battles made him realize these things at home when the car breaks down or when Megan was sneaking cigarettes at 14 or 15 years old out of his closet, like that wasn't as big of a deal. And he handled it with the right emotional regulation. There was still disciplinary action, but he never flew off the handle because he had learned from past experience, from going through the trauma of being battle tested, to keep a level head. And we can do this ourselves without having to go to battle. We can do this through regular exercise, just like I said, our physical body. So there's a difference between chronic stress and adaptive stress. So chronic stress is what you're probably feeling right now. It's this overwhelm. It's leading to burnout. You just feel like there's no break. There's no recovery from it. You feel almost completely helpless on how to get it to stop. Like the deadlines just keep coming. Things still have to get done. And there's just this constant pressure on you to do it all. That's what damages resilience, that chronic stress. Adaptive stress is intentional. It's temporary. It's manageable and it's followed by recovery. And this builds resilience. So adaptive stress, think of it like getting on the treadmill at the gym. For me personally, I was a swimmer and not a runner. They always said swimmers made good runners, but I always argued I've never seen a fish succeed outside of water. So I hate running. But I will make myself get on the treadmill. So it's intentional. I will say it's temporary. I will set the time limit. It's 20 minutes. I'm going to do 20 minutes on this treadmill. I'll make it manageable. I challenge myself. I add the inclines. But when I get off that treadmill, I go and I recover. I get my protein shake. I go do something I enjoy, and I get that recovery. We have to do the same thing with stress. So, what does that look like? For some of you, you have a very strong social media addiction, and you're having a hard time focusing and you're very distracted. Emails come in, phone rings, messages pop up, and you just can't seem to help yourself from checking them all. Like if I asked you to, like, hey, turn off your Outlook for 20 or 30 minutes so you can get good focus work, you might fight me on it. Like, no, I need to be on my email. For you, I would challenge you, go for a 15 or 20-minute walk and don't take your phone. For some people, that's super challenging. Practice saying no. Give yourself the goal of, I'm going to say no 3 times today. I mean, if you have small children, you might say it more often, but like gear it towards adults, like coworkers at work. I'm going to push back. I'm going to set a boundary. I'm going to say no to something important today. Have a hard conversation. And this one might seem weird, but to put this into perspective, I work with a lot of HR professionals, and they'll tell you the first time they had to sit down and fire somebody and have that hard conversation, it was difficult and it was messy, and they might have bumbled their way through it. But now they're like firing their 50th person, and it's like clockwork. It doesn't even phase them. They know how the conversation's going to go. They know what the follow ups are going to be. They know the process, the procedure. They know how to handle it with grace. So as they have those hard conversations, you get better at having those hard conversations. Coaches know that too. I mean, when I first started my coaching business, there was a lot of errors and bumbling around and like not being sure of how to respond. But after having a lot of really hard coaching conversations, they've become very natural to me. Try something unfamiliar. If you are a person of routine, I just challenge you, try a new restaurant. Go somewhere new. Switch up your routine. Do something unfamiliar. Try a new sport. Sign up for a new club. Read a different genre of book. Just do something unfamiliar. Try something new, because there's a lot of stress in trying new things and being uncertain. And once you start to try one new thing and you realize it wasn't that bad, you survived it, then the next time you go to try something new, it will be a little easier. One that's super simple but very difficult is taking a cold shower or the ice plunge, like the ice bath, and sitting in that. If you can go through there and practice the deep breathing and regulating your emotion and getting through that discomfort, you actually build up your tolerance to very stressful situations. That knee-jerk reaction to want to take flight and get the heck out of that cold water, when you fight that urge and that resistance, it builds up your resilience to other stressful information or other stressful times when you might want to take flight. Strength training and challenging exercise helps to build mental resilience, not just physical resilient training. Pause before reacting emotionally. A lot of times we think we need to have a response instantly. It is okay to say, you know what, let me get back to you on that. Or, I'm not sure at this moment. Or to take a deep breath and count to 10. Taking a pause is perfectly within your ability. We just don't live in a society where we feel like we should take a pause. Everything is so instant nowadays. It's okay to take a pause. Public speaking. A lot of people have massive fear around public speaking. One of the things I'm seeing pop up that I think is really interesting is PowerPoint parties. I don't know if anyone else has seen this trend on social media, but it's like you and like 5 or 6 of your friends, and you have to make a 15-minute presentation, and it can be on like fun topics. It can be like, who was the worst Disney villain? And like maybe somebody picks Jafar and somebody picks Scar, and they have to like give their presentation on why they think that character is the worst. I've also seen like your craziest conspiracy theory, and you have to like convince everyone of your crazy conspiracy. And then they can be fun and lighthearted, but it builds up that practice to public speaking. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. Journaling difficult emotions. For some of you that need more of that self inner reflection, sometimes we don't like to think on our thoughts that we're having. We don't like to take that time to really reflect on how we are feeling, especially when we're people pleasers. We tend to neglect ourselves. And so taking some time to just journal out, how do I feel in this moment? How do I want to feel? is really powerful for building up resilience and recognizing like where you are personally so you can start to set some boundaries. For some of you, the challenge is just asking for help. A lot of you just don't want to ask for help. That's the challenge. Ask for help. I'm going to ask for help twice today on whatever projects. And then another one that builds mental resilience that I think is kind of fun is sitting with discomfort instead of trying to escape it immediately. So, one that I learned from another coach was I'm one of those people that when I get an itch, I have to scratch it like right away. I can't like sit there and not scratch an itch. But what they said was, sit with it, like set a timer for like a minute, and you have to sit there and not scratch that itch for a minute. Eventually, like minutes seem really long when it's in those kinds of things. Like anyone who's held a plank for a minute will tell you they never realized how long a plank was or a minute was until they had to hold a plank for a full minute. But you know what? After you hold a 1 minute plank or after you go a minute without scratching an itch, 30 seconds seems like light years. It becomes so much easier. So, the other part of this with those exercises, as you're doing them, is we need to be focusing on regulating our nervous system. So, our nervous system is our body's control center. It's what helps us to respond to everything around us. So, when something super stressful happens, let's say like a loud noise, an angry email, a scary thought, your body will automatically respond and it will default into one of those four F's: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And you have to like take back control of your control center. You have to figure out how to regulate that nervous system. One of the ways you can do this is the stop technique. And it's an acronym. S stands for stop, pause. Whatever you're doing, whatever you're saying, whatever you're thinking, you need to disrupt that autopilot reaction. Whatever it is, like maybe that knee jerk reaction is to snap back, send an email back, just take a pause. Then take a breath. Deep breathing actually signals safety to your nervous system. That's why so many people will teach deep breathing exercises. A lot of meditation is about diaphragmatic breathing because one slow inhale and exhale can start to actually calm that fight, flight, freeze response. So stop, take a breath, and then observe. Notice what's happening right now. What are you feeling physically and emotionally? What thoughts are coming up? What's the story you're telling yourself? If you're like me and your auto response is to go to fight mode, sometimes I have to remind myself I don't have bail money, so I need to respond appropriately. I need to take a moment to observe the situation and think about the story I'm telling myself. Then proceed, move forward with intention. What is going to be the next helpful thing? The other thing I challenge you is what's the most kind step you can take right now? And I'm not even just saying, like, how can you be kind to maybe the other person in the situation, but how can you be also kind to yourself? Because a lot of times we will take a helpful step and it might be kind for others, but it's not always kind for ourselves. We will hype other people up, we will talk other people up, but we won't look ourselves in the mirror and hype ourselves up. We don't speak kindly to ourselves. So as you are going through this and you are regulating, I also don't want you to fall into like the fawn again. I want you to really be thinking when I proceed, how I respond, it needs to be helpful and it needs to be kind to myself and others. You get to choose the response. I want you to get out of reaction and into response. And just like I teach my kids, you cannot control what other people do to you. You can't control the guy that cuts you off in traffic, but you can choose how to respond. Are you going to respond by flipping them the bird, or are you going to respond in kindness and just move along your day and ignore it and let it go? You get to choose how you respond, but we have to regulate that nervous system. Otherwise, we're going to go that knee-jerk reaction. So stop, take a breath, observe, and proceed. Simple ways to regulate our nervous system. Take the slow, deep breaths. We already talked about that, how that helps to actually calm the fight, flight, freeze response. Go for a walk, getting outside. Sometimes you get inundated with lots of things to do and you're getting overwhelmed. The best thing you can do is say, you know what, I'm going to go for a 5-minute walk or a 10-minute walk and then come back to this fresh. You just need a reset. This one might seem weird. If you have where it's HR friendly, a best friend in the office that you are okay being comfortable with, or maybe you work from home and you have your dog or your cat. Your dog probably likes it more than your cat, or like your spouse or your kids. Hugging someone is really great for regulating your nervous system. So when you're having a really bad day, getting a good hug actually releases oxytocin. But here's the trick. You can't do like we typically do as adults, where you give that little 4-second hug and then release. It's got to be like a nice long 10 seconds or more hug. When you hug for 10 seconds or more, your brain actually switches from pumping out that adrenaline and cortisol to releasing oxytocin, which is this feel good, calming hormone. It's the one that, like, when they tell new moms to do skin to skin for the baby to help them sleep better, because it releases oxytocin for mom and baby so they can both get a little better sleep. So I always say, do kind of like the Disney rule. The Disney rule is characters never release the hug. They make the child release it. So when a child goes and hugs their favorite princess, if you watch, the princess doesn't release first. They wait until the child releases before they release the hug. So try to hold on to it as long as you can and practice a 10-second hug. Listen to calming music, having maybe that white noise in the background or sound bowls or something that's just soothing to you. And a big one, something that really changed for me, when I have a busy day that I am overwhelmed and I'm at all these networking events and conferences and it's just so loud and overwhelming. I know a lot of us, we go to our car and the first thing we do is we flip on that podcast or our music or whatever it is that you like to listen to. I challenge you, sit in silence. Like, take that drive home and don't turn on anything. Just give your body a chance to like decompress and not have this outside, influence. So sit in silence and just have some quiet moments for yourself. These little small actions actually tell your brain, like, hey, we're safe. You can relax now. And so it's important that with the fitness, just like when you're at the gym, there should be a recovery. These are the things you do at the recovery. So after you've practiced being on the treadmill, or you've taken the cold shower, or you've done the public speaking, whatever the challenge is that you're going to give yourself, make sure there is a moment at the end to re-regulate and calm down and recover. So some of the key takeaways I want you to have today is, one, stress responses are normal. I don't want you to feel guilty for going into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode. That is you in survival. We need to be accepting of that and not thinking that like we're bad people because this is the reaction we had. It is perfectly normal stress. Your mental fitness, how much stress you can deal with, is absolutely trainable, just like your body at the gym with adaptive stress. Those things that are intentional, that are temporary, that you have control over. Awareness creates a choice to respond and not react. So when we know what triggers us and when we know what our default reaction is, we can stop and we can choose to respond in kind. Small recovery habits matter, whether it's hugging your kids or your spouse before bed or listening to calming music. Doing something to help you recover is going to be a huge piece of this. And resilience is built through consistent practice. So this is something just like going to the gym. It takes time to go to the gym. You're not going to walk in there and maybe bench 225 right off the bat. But over time and practice, you could get there. And what's really amazing is, just like your physical wellness at the gym, once you lift 225, 100 pounds becomes your warm-up weight. So as you're doing these things that are challenging your brain, that is challenging you to stay in control in stressful moments like the cold showers, suddenly like that becomes your warm up. That's nothing. A cold shower, oh, that's nothing. Once I've been through something really difficult, these other things, they're nothing to me. You're trying to build up that resilience. If you want to go deeper with any of this, please reach out. You can scan that QR code and book a call. I'd be happy to sign you up for, like, if you want to do any coaching, if you want to have another wellness workshop, if you're, want to pitch this to your employer, if you think this would be helpful for anyone else that you know or your employer, please feel free to reach out to me. Like I said, I work with individuals and organizations. Last week, I did Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, and I did my free 30-minute version, and that sold out. And so there was a lot more content I had that I didn't share just because it was my 30-minute version. So I am offering the full 60-minute version. It's going to be on Tuesday, June 9th. However, this is something that I've crafted and created, and I can't give it all away for free, but I'm only charging $25. And if you're one of the first 10 people to register, you get $5 off. So if you go onto Eventbrite and you click on it, that promo code should activate automatically for the first 10. Otherwise, you can use promo code first 10 if for some reason it doesn't work. But that's going to be the full 60-minute deep dive into change your thoughts, change your life. So there were things that we didn't go over in the 30-minute version that we're going to hit on in that one. The next free wellness webinar. So, like I said, I have a leadership series I do, and then I have a wellness series I do, and I do a webinar a week, and they kind of alternate from week to week. The next wellness one is going to be It's Okay to Not Be Okay. So, it's recognizing mental exhaustion. We're going to talk about patterns of loneliness, emotional exhaustion, some of those unhealthy coping mechanisms that maybe we're using, whether it's doom scrolling on social media or using food as a coping mechanism. We're going to talk about those, recognize them, and then talk about some things we can do to shift so that we have a little bit healthier response to that exhaustion. At this time, I'd love to open it up for anyone who has questions. If for any reason you don't feel comfortable asking a question in front of the group or in the chat, you can email me at lifeforcewellness.com, just Megan at Life Force Wellness, or you can book a consult call. Notice there's no www there. It is just lifeforcewellness.com/free consult. And then also connect with me on LinkedIn if you're not already. I always post what webinars are coming up, different events, ideas, free downloads. We post all of those on social media. So you can scan that QR code to also connect with me on LinkedIn. If no one has any questions, then I will let you go with the rest of your day. I thank you guys for joining me, and I hope to see you on the next one.